Welcome, dear listeners. I'm Jonathan Carlin.
And I'm Benjamin Carlin.
And we invite you to join us through the Griffin door, your one-way ticket to the enchanting world of Harry Potter. So grab your wands and dust off your broomsticks and join us as we unlock the riddles inside Goblet of Fire, Chapter 9, The Dark Mark.
Yeah, the calm before the storm.
This is sort of the storm breaking.
I was going to say, the calm before the storm is kind of over.
It's over. That was the World Cup. That was last chapter.
Little bit of thunder, little bit of lightning.
Little bit of skulls in the sky.
Yeah. If anything, the thunder in this particular case is the Death Eaters, and the lightning is sort of like, and the Death Eaters are like, oh no.
Oh no, not the Dark Mark.
Not the Dark Mark. That's so terrifying.
It is.
I know. Yep. So this is it's kind of a beefy chapter.
It is. As I was going through it, I was like, oh man, a lot happens. This is like the action is really starting to begin now. You know, like there's been some build up. We got to the Quidditch World Cup. We had our fun. Boom. Bad things are happening.
Right. And I mean, it's worth noting that this is kind of remarkable because we are at chapter 9 and we're still not at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
And in Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you are, we're, chapter 9 is like it's more than halfway through the book. I think
you're at like Christmas.
Exactly. I think there's only 17 chapters in the first book. So yeah, it's pretty unbelievable that we're still not there, and the plot is actively starting to kind of heat up a little bit. So as per always, we got to talk a little bit here about the chapter art for the Dark Mark.
We sure do. And so what we see is basically the campgrounds, and there is a tent on fire. You can't see any of the Death Eaters down below, but you do see the people floating in the air high above the flames.
Yes, and I have a couple of quick notes here, and not that either of them is terribly important, but just things I took away from it. The first is that I'm almost kind of surprised that the image used here isn't just the Dark Mark itself.
Oh, I know. There are sometimes where the chapter art is surprisingly not what you would think. Like, you're right. I'm surprised it isn't the Dark Mark itself. Like, the Gilderoy Lockhart chapter isn't a picture of Gilderoy Lockhart.
Right. It's like, but famously, almost certainly your mind is like, no, surely it is. And I can picture him holding like a picture of himself or a book that he wrote with like a glittering smile. And it's like, no, that's the Flourish and Blotch chapter.
Duh.
Yeah. And I think similarly, there is a chapter art that is the Dark Mark. The thing that I think is interesting about that is that oftentimes with the chapter art, what I think they're attempting to do is be cautious of spoilers.
Right.
And so maybe by showing you what the Dark Mark looks like, that would be like giving you too much information. But in this particular case, if you're going to name the chapter something as ominous as the Dark Mark, like, I think it's fine. Like, we already don't know what it is. The Dark Mark doesn't mean anything to us, but it certainly doesn't sound good.
I mean, seeing like a skull with a snake coming out of its mouth as the chapter art, you're right. I don't think that would be like, oh, I know what it is now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when it happens, you'll just have like context for it then.
Right.
Yeah.
But so then the other thing I think is kind of interesting is that there are actually 4 people that are being held in the air.
Yeah.
It is Mr. Roberts, his wife, and his 2 children.
Yes.
And inside of the picture, there's only 3 people in the air.
There's only 3.
So I actually drew
You drew a 4th person.
I drew a 4th little stick figure
Add
person.
to the torment.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So just a little teaser for those folks who are signing up for the annual patronage there.
Yeah.
Because you get a page from one of our books, so somebody will get a page with chapter art by the artist and also a little adornment from one Ben Carlin.
Yeah, that's true. In case you are unaware or wondering whether or not we were still doing it, yes, if you sign up as an annual patron for this show at any point, you will get a page from one of our books that we have finished. So at the moment, you could get one from Prisoner of Azkaban as well, just mailed directly to you.
Exactly right. Yeah. And I think one of the perks that we don't talk about enough with the Patreon is that you do get early access to the next week's episode. They come out on Friday night for Patreon listeners, and they are ad-free as well. So if those are things that you could find yourself interested in, again, patreon.com/throughthegryffindor. Be sure to check them out. And then, if you sign up for the annual membership, you get that page in the mail as well. So really fun. Anyway, without any further ado, let's dive on into Chapter 9.
Let's do it. So we kick off right away with Mr. Weasley just sort of like trying to smooth over the gambling situation with Fred and George. Says, Don't tell your mother you've been gambling, Mr. Weasley implored Fred and George. And I'm like, why not? They won. Like,
that's exactly
I know.
it. Yeah.
Mom, look, we don't know what the odds are, but he says, I'll give you really good odds on that. And earlier he says he'd give someone else like great odds at 10-1. So I'm inclined to believe it was at least 10-1.
I mean, it had to be, yeah. So I've always been curious about what their payout would be because, like, I mean, you would imagine even just a 2-1 odds, they're looking at walking away with what, like 70,
like 70 plus galleons.
Yeah, which would be like a nice haul there alone. But I mean, it's such a ridiculous guess that I mean, it wouldn't even surprise me if it was like 100-1
Oh yeah, I know that like Ireland wins, but yeah, because it makes no sense.
Right. I mean, it's a rather preposterous suggestion. I mean, as of this very moment, not to get off topic, but our favorite NFL team, the Commanders.
Yeah,
it's like I've looked at the odds of them winning the Super Bowl because they're currently in the playoffs, and it is astronomically high. So anyway, not that really matters or anything for the purposes of today's conversation.
May as well throw a galleon on it, Ben.
May as well throw one galleon. I mean,
dude, I'm so hyped for that game on Saturday, though.
It's going to be a good one.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
All of the stats would say they're not going to win, but you know what? That wouldn't be any fun. There'd be no reason to even play then.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
Exactly. Yeah. Everybody loves an underdog, especially us. But anyway, yeah. So Fred immediately is like, "Not to worry, Dad. We've got big plans for this money. We don't want it confiscated."
I know. I highlighted that too. I was like, "Can you imagine?" Like if they're like, look, we bet all of our savings and like multiplied it times 10, and Mrs. Weasley was like, well, you clearly you haven't learned anything. Give me all of that.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Can you imagine like her taking their money?
No,
I can't either.
That would be terrible.
I like to think that whatever the odds were, it's still less than 1,000 galleons, such that Harry, it's like they lost their money to Ludo Bagman, but Harry like more than compensates for it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. Like they actually come out even more on top.
Yeah.
Overall. No, that's good. That's good. The other thing that I think is worth noting about that is that it says this money specifically, which it doesn't say the money, which would be like the hypothetical money that we will get. It means this money that we currently have in our possession.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty vitally important because it's easy to be thrown off who Fred and George are going to spend the rest of the book secretly planning to write to.
Yes.
And this line in particular would basically be more than enough to let us know they have their money.
Right.
You know, so it'd be like, who are they writing to?
Right.
You know, who is this totally off-page person who has caused them difficulty?
Yeah, that they're blackmailing now.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems as though they have been given money, which again, we will eventually be told directly that what he has paid them out is
leprechaun gold.
Leprechaun gold, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's going to be more. There's like a bunch of hints. This is a really fascinatingly written chapter where many things are told to you point blank, and your own self-doubt like causes you to not like pick up on it.
I know what you mean, and I have a lot of those highlighted. I'm very curious to go through it because one of the things that I think is like really critical to me when it comes to appreciating a story is the groundwork that is laid. Like, because so many stories are going to ultimately have a misdirect, and Goblet of Fire is chock full of them.
Oh yeah.
And it's like you want to be able to go back and actually see all of the necessary pieces were in fact laid out for you.
Yeah.
And I personally think, especially with the Fred and George situation with Ludo Bagman, they're neatly laid out. Like it's all there. Like we've learned about the leprechaun gold. We've seen it. You know, they've said that they've got their money. Like, you know, it's kind of neat how it all comes together. And even more of that will be true as this chapter goes on. Yeah, it's very well executed.
Yes, it is. So let's see. Moving down the page here. They say, Mr. Weasley, I love this line, it says, when they finally reached the tents, nobody felt like sleeping at all. And given the level of noise around them, Mr. Weasley agreed they could all have one last cup of cocoa before turning in. And I'm like, first of all, as if you're just allowed to still tell what, like, Charlie and Bill and Percy are allowed to do.
That's also true. Yeah.
But, like also, Ireland just won the World Cup. Like, dude, I would have no intention of making my kids go to bed. Like, let them celebrate, man.
Right.
Like, also level of noise. Like, it said it's gonna say like here, like I wouldn't fancy having to go tell the Irish they've got to stop celebrating. Like, good luck.
Oh, that's not stopping.
That's
all
not
night.
stopping.
Yeah.
If this. You know what? Because like if the Dark Mark stuff didn't start happening, like this party goes all night, maybe into next week.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
such is the kind of victory that has just been had.
Especially because these people were fully prepared for a potentially like days-long match.
I know.
You know?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah. And they were treated to only a 30-minute match.
Right.
So they've barely left the campground. You know, they're right back here.
Oh yeah. No,
yeah.
it's going on for a minute. Maybe the Bulgaria tents will pack things up and start heading their way home. But,
Yeah, maybe they will.
otherwise,
But like
yeah.
even when they're heading into the stadium or it's counting down, it's like as the match drew closer, like all illusions of hiding the magic like disappeared. I'm like, it's way worse now.
It definitely is.
It's way worse now.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
But I like the mention of hot chocolate or the hot cocoa. It's because it does seem like such a joyous little, like, you know, kind of like a family that went to the sporting match.
Yeah.
You know, they're just going back. They're just gonna have some
Go back.
cocoa.
Well, wasn't that a fun day out at the Quidditch match? You guys want some hot chocolate?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very quaint. It's very quaint. And it sounds like they're all just talking enjoyably about the match. Mr. Weasley got drawn into a disagreement about cobbing with Charlie.
I know. I'm like, if you don't remember, cobbing was like use of elbows.
Excessive use of elbows.
I know. I'm like, what could the disagreement be? Like, it should be more legal or something. Like,
Let the boys play.
let the boys play, ref.
Yeah, no, that's a Remember the Titans reference.
It sure is.
But it's a very good question. And in the last chapter, it was the Bulgarian keeper who committed this particular foul. So even that is like one of those things where I'm very curious as to like who is on which side.
Yeah, who's on
here.
which side of this?
Yeah, like who is more likely? Because Charlie is the ex-seeker.
Yeah.
So who is more likely to be in favor or not in favor of letting them play?
Of letting them play, I don't know. You'd have to think. I feel like Charlie would be more in favor of just let it go.
Just let it go. Yeah.
No need to call that.
Exactly.
No need to stop the game over something as trivial as cobbing.
That's cobbing.
Not when like cannonballs are flying around the field.
Honestly, that's kind of a fair point.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where Charlie's coming from. He's like, Dad, they get hit by cannonballs.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
who cares if you got a little elbow in the face, you know?
Right.
That's
right.
nothing.
At
You know
least-
I'm coming around on this argument. I'm with Charlie.
We are pro cobbing.
We are pro, let them play. Let them play,
or not pro cobbing penalties.
We're not. We're pro like non-tight officiating. You know.
I guess that's it. I guess that's it. Yeah.
Well, sometimes I swear you're watching football. They're like, they're calling a tight one tonight. You know.
I know, and it's like
Any blade of grass out of place, that's a flag.
it's never going to be a fun game to watch the rest of.
Nope. Then this is just frankly unbelievable to me. It says Ginny fell asleep at the tiny table and spilled hot chocolate all over the floor. I'm like, are you kidding me, Ginny? Wake up! Who doesn't finish your hot chocolate? Anyway, that's all.
So she's sleeping on her hot chocolate.
She's sleeping on it, man.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. No one ever has failed to finish a celebratory glass of hot cocoa.
That's your declaration. In always and forever.
Hard stand.
Hard stand. Okay.
Especially someone as cool as Ginny Weasley, okay?
That was my note about this particular instance. Is I was like, to me, I feel like this is signaling that Ginny has still not quite crossed the threshold into who she will start to become in the next 3 books. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's still maybe like just a little bit more like the innocent,
just still just on the edges of like little kid.
Right, like her life has only been put in extreme danger once so far.
Right, she's
so
only been kidnapped and controlled and possessed by Voldemort the one time.
Right, she's basically a child.
Yeah, she only petrified 4 students at the school.
Right. Yeah, and wrote in blood like a handful of times. A handful. You get it?
Get it? Because blood.
Because blood and smeared by hand. Anyway, let's see. So then Mr. Weasley basically says, okay, time for bed, everybody. And he's glad that he's not on duty, which is honestly truly amazing because it seems like every other ministry official that we've met is
on duty.
Yeah. So Arthur won some some amazing prize by not having to work on
By
this
Felix
particular.
Felix Felicicing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because Dumbledore called him up and was like, Arthur, I'm so sorry.
Sorry about the rat. That's on me. I'm gonna say that was on me.
Do you remember last year, the year before?
Remember last year when I gave you that little bottle? I was thinking maybe it's time for another one.
Yeah,
you know. You've earned it.
No, the end of year handing out of Felix Felicices by Dumbledore is my new favorite headcanon.
I know, right?
Yeah.
There's no way. Then Harry is laying in bed dreaming about how he can try the Wronski feint because somehow Oliver Wood had never managed to convey with all his wriggling diagrams of how that move was supposed to look. And I'm like, so one, Oliver did know about it. He did know about feinting, but they don't. Harry seems to be unaware of feinting until the last chapter.
Yes, and I think even in the last chapter, we may have even said, like, how is it that Oliver never instructed Harry on what honestly on the whole feels like a kind of low-hanging fruit strategy for a seeker if you think about the sport for, at least a couple hours worth of time to be like, you know what would help? Faking.
Oh, I know. Because otherwise, it's just sort of just circle around the top of the field and look for the snitch.
Right. Yeah. Keep your head on a pivot. Don't get hit by a bludger.
Exactly.
Right.
That seems like most of what seeking is. It's like they got to have some other things to do.
Exactly. Yeah. It definitely seems like that would make that particular position a lot more interesting because it is such a clutch position otherwise.
You got to you're playing the other seeker as much as you are the snitch.
Right.
You know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like a bit of a chess match.
Yeah.
But then Harry starts to kind of imagine himself, I guess, playing for England's national team. He can hear Ludo Bagman's voice echoing throughout the stadium. I give you Potter.
This is a bit of foreshadowing, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. So I was like, to his demise, this exact thing will happen.
Just not how he dreams it up.
Well, and what's interesting about not how he dreams it up is that I jumped forward a few chapters to get a look at this for the first task when Harry does step out to face the dragon for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's basically as soon as Harry steps out there, he washes out all of the noise, all the sound. He is just focused on what's going on. So as glamorous as he's made it in his head, even if the day came where this did happen, it would mean nothing to him.
Right.
It's fun to daydream about that, but then once you're the person in the driver's seat, it's that's just the thing that is happening.
Right. It's just back there.
Yeah.
You're not super aware of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, what is also interesting about this, though, is that it's maybe the only other time Harry has a daydream about a different profession of being a professional Quidditch player.
Oh, interesting.
Later in this book, Mad Eye / Barty Crouch Jr. will suggest to him the idea of being an Auror, and that will just sort of be his he's like that. Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Right.
But
yes.
here he is daydreaming about a different one.
No, that's a really good point. It's a really good point. And I think it's kind of almost it seems well set up once again. I mean, because we talk about this, and I go back again to that first chapter, right, where he wakes up from the dream, and his scar is hurting. And I think the exact phrasing is that even Quidditch, in Harry's opinion, the best sport in the world, couldn't distract him at the moment. And isn't that so fitting that before Voldemort's return, he's daydreaming about being a Quidditch star.
Yeah.
Afterwards, all he can ever do is think about being an Auror.
Yeah.
So it's he has to set aside the daydream for the mission.
Right.
A little bit. So it just kind of, that lie, I mean, I think I've gone back to it in 4 different episodes now, but it's amazing that it keeps.
You're right, because he's having a dream about Voldemort and Quidditch can't distract him. And now he'll be having a dream about Quidditch and Voldemort will distract him.
Exactly right. Yeah. Oh, wow. I got chills a little bit as you said that. That's very good. Yeah. Very neatly teed up, bro.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, so he falls into sleep and then, get up, Ron, Harry, come on, we've got to go. This is urgent. And she's like, well, here we go.
Here we go. Yes, the fun is over. The daydreaming is done. It says Harry sat up quickly and the top of his head hit the canvas. And
what's the matter?
To which I was like, ouch.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, I mean, but it's kind of a joke because canvas is not hard.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it probably just illustrates the speed at which he sat up. But I was like, your head hitting canvas is basically an irrelevant action.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Good noise. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's what. That's the sound. I love the noises in the campsite had changed. So I like this because just alongside our read through of this Harry Potter, I'm reading a book called Lonesome Dove right now, and you wouldn't believe how often it's just like that noise was different, and it was just like they'll just be sitting out in the middle of the prairie, in the middle of anywhere, and it's like certain noises will just become like background, and certain noises will be like, what was that?
It's funny because that is true. Like even here at our office, we are like near enough to like an interstate where emergency vehicles will regularly go by.
Yeah.
And to the point where like sometimes like if we're recording like a Super Carlin Brothers video, we actually have to like pause and like wait for the fire engine.
Yeah, the jet or the siren or whatever.
Exactly. But then every once in a while, there's one where it's kind of like, what's going on? Like maybe we should go look outside.
Yeah, that's not a regular noise.
Right. This noise is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's a good point. It's like I've experienced this exact phenomenon. So Harry is trying to get ready, but the urgency is rather significant. Mr. Weasley is basically just like, no, just put a jacket on over your pajamas. We need to get outside quickly.
Mr. Weasley put his jeans over his pajamas, to which I'm like, are you wearing 2 pairs of pants?
That sounds so uncomfortable.
I literally wrote, sounds so uncomfy.
Yes, exactly. But it's also kind of funny because it's like the reaction to this kind of danger is no, get a jacket, get outside.
Oh, I know.
Whereas I feel like in so many instances where danger is the foot, the idea would be like, get inside quickly, there's danger.
I know. He says get outside quickly. I was like, is that the best option? Or
Right. I mean, and to be fair, what we will eventually learn is that the Death Eaters are actively like blasting.
Yeah, they're like setting tents on fire. So it probably is, but you're right. It is like the opposite of what you might think is the conventional wisdom in the moment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But then we get outside and we can see by the light of a few fires that were still burning that people are running into the woods. And honestly, this is kind of scary to think about happening if you actually put the magnitude of it together. I mean, it can be a very dangerous thing having a undirected stampede of humans moving in a direction in the dark.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like it's easy to underestimate that on the whole, but like I imagine walking into like any concert or sporting event or even just being at like a parade or something like that. But like if everybody started moving in a direction quickly, that can become very dangerous very fast if anybody falls down. But then we see that there's something that was emitting odd flashes of light and noises like gunfire. Then came a burst of strong green light, to which I was kind of like, what is the strong green light?
I know. Like, are people casting Avada Kedavra?
Right. Like I can't tell if this is supposed to be like the wizard equivalent of like, I mean, we see gunfire in just the line before, but like, like firing a gun into the air.
I know. Like,
to sow chaos, so
I
to
was
speak.
wondering the same thing. Are they just like shooting the killing curse into the sky? Just like, pew,
Right,
like,
just
for like the overall effect of it or something. Like, because I guess we know they also have like the muggles floating up there. So it's just like, haha, look.
Right, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
I'm not hitting them, but I'm coming close.
Right. And it's very interesting. We'll come back to it here in a few minutes, but the specific action of chaos that they are like enacting right now is lifting people into the air, which seems so just sort of like we'll choose something. We'll choose a very visible way to be taunting those people, but I do think it's very interesting that is the specific selection of what is going on. But I'll come back to that. But in the meantime, I don't know of any other spells that we're going to learn about in the books that are demonstrated as strong green light because it is so otherwise heavily associated with the Avada Kedavra curse.
Right. Yeah. So I kept wondering about that too, because it does keep coming up over and over, like loud, like green light flashes.
Yes.
And that is definitely the spell that makes green flashes.
Exactly. And we will learn about that particular spell in this book.
Yes.
So,
the other thing that's happening is just this sort of like riot behavior. Like a lot of people are running into the woods, like fleeing the chaos, but it says loud jeering, roars of laughter and drunken yells were drifting towards them. So it's like there are a lot of people running like from the situation, but there's like a lot of people like enjoying it as well.
I mean, I see the exact line that you've gotten reference, and I'm aware of the fact that we will eventually learn, I think, and you can probably count on 3 hands the total number of Death Eaters that could be involved in this particular scene. So roars of laughter and drunken yells don't seem like they could fit the small envoy of Death Eaters that do remain.
I know. I've always imagined this to be like 4 Death Eaters or something.
Right. I mean, we're talking like maybe like Lucius, Crab, Goyle, and toss in a couple extras there.
Right. Yeah. The Caros or something.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there. I mean, that could literally just be the aftermath of people who were celebrating and therefore are just not as distracted by the chaos.
Well, look, but no, even down below it says more wizards were joining the marching group, laughing and pointing up at the floating bodies.
Yeah, you're right. That's not very good.
Yeah, it's really not very good. It's like I think, people, what it kind of suggests is like there's like a greater prejudice than you realize in the wider wizarding population. Like people like the rest of the Black family, or maybe like Narcissa Malfoy, who are like, we're not like Death Eaters, but like we still, we kind of get it.
Yeah, that's man. Yeah, I don't like that.
I know. Me neither.
Yeah, kind of hits me. But I think you're right. I think that must be a piece of what's going on there, which even that I guess kind of makes sense, because oftentimes when I think about like the scenes that we're seeing in Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows, where Voldemort's regime is really starting to like rain chaos on the nation, it's kind of like, how are so few wizards doing this much? But this might be suggesting that you've got like the Death Eaters who are like amongst ranks, and then you've got like another big portion of the populace who are also like, yeah, we're maybe not like that extreme, but we do follow.
But they're still like laughing at the scene.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So okay, that's a fair observation. Although I hate to think it. So
no, I know, I agree. I was really noticing it as I was reading it this time, because it like comes up a few times.
Yeah.
Where it's just like there's like the crowd is growing. It's like there are Death Eaters doing it, but they're being joined by lots of unmasked people as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But notably not Stan Shunpike, who we will learn is elsewhere.
He's elsewhere. We always got to know what Stan's doing for some reason.
We really do.
Yeah.
And the current status of his facial.
Yeah. He is so recognizable for his pimples.
Yes. It's like that. That is always the thing that has to come up with Stan. Anyway, It doesn't matter. But they didn't seem to have faces. Then he realized that their heads were hooded and their faces masked. High above them, floating along in midair, 4 struggling figures were being contoured into grotesque shapes.
Ugh.
I know, it's really, really bad.
It really is. It's pretty gross what they're doing, for sure.
Yeah, the line that got me, and I think that this is like one that like, I mean, not that I've ever thought that this was good behavior in the first place, but I do think that parent lens definitely makes it like really frustrating and upsetting, is the 2 of the figures were very small.
Oh, I know. They're just straight up torturing kids.
Yeah, so that's bad.
Yeah. And I love when Ron comes out and goes, "That's sick. That is really sick." And it's like, yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah. Ron nails it right on the head with that assessment. Yep. Let's see. Once or twice, Harry saw one of the marchers blast a tent out of his way. Several caught fire. The screaming grew louder. So you can definitely start to see that this like contagious chaos that maybe you're right. Like what is the term for that? Like where everybody,
it's like that mob mentality.
The mob mentality. Yeah. Like it seems that it's like that's starting to like kind of permeate a little bit. Let's see here. This is when Harry recognized that Mr. Roberts, the campsite manager, the other 3 looked as though they might be his wife and children, which is again super upsetting to think about. People are screeching and hooting with glee.
Yeah, and they're like 60 feet up in the air. They're like really high.
Yes. Yeah. It's bad. It's
Yep.
bad. There is kind of a cool moment for the Weasley boys where you can kind of almost like see them as like a little bit of like action heroes, and this would actually include Percy, which is so infrequently the case. But at the same moment, Bill, Charlie, and Percy emerge from the boys' tent fully dressed with their sleeves rolled up and their wands out.
Yeah.
It's like this is kind of a moment, and Percy's not perfect in this chapter or at all, but it is kind of one of those moments where it's like when you know that he's as good as he is, and like when danger has appeared, he's like right there in the fray. You're kind of like, I mean, I think to me what it demonstrates is that I'm like, I do respect his magical ability.
Yeah.
Like I don't think he's going to go out there and make a fool of himself.
Right.
Like maybe he's not the most savvy when it comes to being cool around his superiors and stuff like that. But there is a piece of me that's like, Percy's still good at magic. Like he's not going to go in there and like.
I mean, he's still got like the 12 OWLs and stuff.
Precisely. So
Percy Isley.
Percy Isley, exactly. But then, Mr. Weasley basically just like he also is going to be going into the fray himself. He says, "You lot get into the woods and stick together,"
which they don't.
which they immediately do not do.
Yeah.
Let's see here. The crowd beneath the Roberts family was coming even closer. So Fred grabs Ginny's hands, pulls her towards the wood. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and George followed. They all look back as they reach the trees. The crowd beneath the Roberts family was larger than ever, which, at this point in time, it's like there's no two ways about it.
More and more people just keep joining. They're like, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
Very, very bad. It also seems like with this, I mean, I guess the crowd is what's making it so hard because it says ministry wizards were dashing from every direction towards the source of the trouble. It feels like they'd be able to sort it out pretty quickly, but obviously they can't. It feels like there's just too many people there.
Right. Yeah. And I think, the big issue there is this next line. It says, it looked as though they were scared to perform any spell that might make the Roberts family fall, which obviously is a really big concern because you got to make sure that you have enough control inside of all of the madness that's going on. Then as we're working our way into the woods here, we hear Ron yell with pain. And Hermione finally busts out her wand and says, "Oh, this is stupid. Lumos." And
Underage magic.
Underage magic. I know. I literally wrote, like, had she been resisting doing this before, or the others as well? Like, is nobody in the woods using magic here? But this is clearly one of those instances. Again, it kind of goes back to the idea of the trace. It's like you're surrounded by adult wizards. Magic is happening everywhere. It's you have a hall pass.
Yeah, well, especially like with like the illegal magic happening back at the campsite.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. The setup for Ron yelling with pain, though, was a little bit of false alarm, maybe. Because then two sentences later it says, "Tripped over a tree root," he said, angry, getting to his feet again. To which the one note I had there, and why I brought it up in the first place, is that he did just very recently have a broken leg.
Oh, right.
So
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure Madame Pomfrey fixed it, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah. God, do you know what that line where it says, "And then he heard Ron yell with pain," like that? I can imagine. Do you remember the book's Goosebumps?
Yes.
If this was a Goosebumps book, that would be the end of the chapter.
Oh, it absolutely. And then Mom would be like, "All right, time to go to bed."
And you'd be like, "Oh my God, what happened? Wait,
right?
Why did he yell in pain?" And then it would be like, "Ron tripped over a tree root," and you'd be like, "That was the worst cliffhanger in the world." Goosebumps again.
Are you joshing me right now? How are there so many of these books?
So annoying.
It is.
Anyway.
That's a very good comparison, though, and you're dead on the money.
Yeah. Fortunately, this isn't the end of the chapter.
No, it is not. We have plenty left to do. But then, as per always, at the worst possible time, Draco seems to show up.
He's just there.
Yes. And
ready with a quip.
This is totally something that I think will get worked into the new TV show at some point in time. But this scene from Draco is just so frustrating. Like I think in hindsight tend to really try hard to empathize more with Draco. We've always called for more of like a Draco redemption arc.
Yeah.
Like, he's pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, he's pretty bad for this scene, especially too. Yeah. I mean, he just immediately chimes in. "Well, with feet that size, hard not to," said a drawling voice. He's just like ready to go. Standing there, leaning against a tree, looking utterly relaxed. And then I love the Ron told Malfoy to do something that Harry knew he would never say in front of Mrs. Weasley. Like, oh, that's great. What'd he say?
Why can't we hear?
Why don't we hear? Yeah.
Language, Weaslly.
Yeah, language.
You wouldn't like her spotted, would you? And he's nodding to Hermione, of course. And this, like, I think that this is, like, we're starting to see, I think, Hermione, like, building mental defenses against the kind of taunting that Draco is employing here. Like, Draco is saying a lot of things that I think can easily make Harry and Ron mad on her behalf. But I think that, like, I think this even happened when they ran into Lucius in the Quidditch World, during the Quidditch World Cup, where he says something, I think, about Hermione, and she like stands her ground.
Yeah.
With him. And at this point in time, basically, he says a bunch of terrible things about her being a mudblood and stuff, and that they're going after Muggles, and that they're going to be able to figure out that she's one of them, and whatever. And Hermione's just like, never mind, Ron. Like basically taking his arm and like trying to restrain him as he took a step towards Malfoy. So
Yeah.
I think that it's like a lot of, I think, showing like Hermione's maturity. Like she's definitely starting to realize like, there are other ways to beat these people than in these stupid, back alley spats.
Right. Like by farming SPEW.
That's it precisely.
You're right. She starts getting like better, like more cool with stuff like this with Malfoy, and then also starts taking more like an interest in like helping other groups as well.
Yes.
In this chapter, specifically house elves. But yeah, so I think this is it's a line that's always so frustrating, and I think that's exactly the point or whatever. But he's like, Granger, they're after Muggles, and Harry's like, Hermione's a witch, which I like that Harry's standing up for her. But then he says, if you think they can't spot a mudblood, stay where you are. And it's like, but like legit, how would they do that? How would they do that?
I mean that's,
and the answer is they can't.
well, they can't. Except we do know that. Lucius is aware of Hermione.
Oh, I mean, I think she is in danger, specifically because like they already know.
Right.
But like just like if they didn't already know, I don't feel like they could tell.
Oh no, they most certainly could not.
Yeah.
They could not. But this is the very next line. It says, "Where are your parents?" said Harry, his temper rising. "Out there wearing masks, are they?" And I was just like, yes.
Yeah. They literally are. And he says, well, if they were, I wouldn't be likely to tell you, would I, Potter? And it's like, yeah, except you just did.
Yeah. Good cover, man.
Good, yeah. Oh, man.
You are fooling everyone. Let
Yeah.
me assure you of that. Anyway, so they finally get their way away from it, and I think Ron is like, "I'll bet you anything his dad is one of those masked lot." And I highlighted that because I was like, the Weasleys are having a really good night for betting.
They sure are.
I mean, Arthur bet on Ireland to win, 1 whole galleon.
There you go.
Fred and George bet that Crumb would catch the snitch and Ireland would win.
Got it.
37 galleons, 15 sickles, and 3 canuts and a trick wand. And here on just this particular occasion, Ron doubles down and bets anything.
Yeah.
That his dad is one of those masks.
Well, he gets it. He gets anything now.
He gets anything.
Anything he wants, I guess.
And he gets Hermione.
Yeah, there you That's what it was. He was betting Hermione.
No, I'm just kidding. I was just like, I love the phrasing because I was like, a lot of betting going on.
A lot of bet, a lot of wagering.
Yeah.
Yep. So moving down here, they're continuing to move away from the attacks through the woods where they get separated from Fred, George, and Ginny because Ron tripped over the tree branch. That was basically an excuse for that to happen.
Yes.
I think more than anything. They run across some French-speaking people in the woods. They say, "Où est Madame Maxime? Nous l'avons perdue," or whatever, which just means, "Where is Madame Maxime? We've lost her," which I guess this would be like if Harry went to the World Cup with Dumbledore.
My exact thought, this exchange as I'm watching it, like, there's like a reference to they're asking, where's Madame Maxine? Ron's like, what? And they're like, Hogwarts. And Hermione's like, Beauxbatons. Well, I mean, she doesn't actually say it like that because she doesn't have a French accent. Unless she's saying Grindylows.
I always imagine she's like annoyed at them or something. It's like Beauxbatons.
Yeah, and it's like there are exchanges that are taking place in the heat of the moment, similar to "They must go to Beauxbatons," said Hermione. Beauxbatons Academy of Magic. I write about it in an appraisal of magical education in Europe.
I highlighted that and said, "Nerd."
I mean, but I'm going to say that both Ron and Hermione are going to have moments inside of this situation where it's like, guys, read the situation a little better. Like they're falling into their traps, their archetypes like a little bit too much, because it's like, I just don't believe that given the circumstances, she's like citing her sources for.
Oh, I know. I mean, the real purpose of this line is to introduce you to Beauxbaton for the future when the Triwizard Tournament's happening.
Honestly, I literally think you could copy and paste the scene and drop it in somewhere when they're walking around the Quidditch World Cup grounds.
Oh, for sure you could.
Like, it's just not necessary.
Yeah.
Here.
It is very random right here as well, unless you just really want to include the phrase, like the character Madame Maxime being mentioned ahead of time. Also, I think it is banana. I feel like in the movies, this happens a lot where like suddenly Hermione starts stealing all of Ron's lines.
Yeah.
Like they do that. And like Ron, you're just sort of like, what is the point of Ron? I feel like this is a Hermione stealing Ron's lines, but in the books. It's just it seems less likely to me that Hermione knows about Beauxbaton than Ron. You know, like you'd have to know.
I would be mildly inclined to agree with the only exception possibly being like a world where like Ron came from such a family of Hogwarts students that like maybe it never even would have like, you know how like some families have like a heritage or like a commitment to like a specific like college or university. And it's like, we all go to Yale.
Yes.
Because that's so easy to do.
So easy.
But like, you know, maybe it never would have considered, he never would have considered going anywhere else. Whereas like Hermione would have like reviewed the other available options.
I mean, I suppose so, but it's still like, you'd think Ron would know that Beauxbaton exists.
It does seem like
because
that
when he even said that, we talked about this before when like Bill had a pen friend in Brazil.
You're right.
You know?
He would know.
Like the other European ones, at least. Maybe not like, you know, the American ones or something, but like this has got to be the other closest school to them.
It does feel that way. It does feel that way. Either which way, so I agree with you. Yeah, I think this feels like a strange one to give to Hermione when it just seems like you could have just let Ron be the person to explain that.
Yeah.
At this point in time, though, Harry digs into his jacket for his own wand, and it isn't there. And he's like, oh no, I don't believe it. I've lost my wand.
You're kidding. Yeah, but I guess he lost it he's lost it for a while now because he actually lost it way back up in the top box.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's the thing that's kind of shocking as well. More than anything, that's the eventual explanation, because we just know that Barty Crouch Jr. and Winky are like in proximity right now.
Oh, but he says that's when he took it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm kind of like, I don't know why it needs to be then when it could just be now.
Oh, right. I guess because like Winky would be attached to him right now.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. Point. Anyway, so let's see here. So then Ron is like, maybe it's back in the tent. Maybe it fell out of your pocket while we were running. This is kind of one of those moments too where it feels a little bit like it hasn't maybe been fully established just how important everybody's wands are to who owns them.
Right.
Like it almost seems like maybe it fell out of your pocket. It's like, oh, it's gonna suck if you have to get a new one, but like that'll be okay.
Right.
You know, and it's like,
yeah, I mean, I remember going to like one of those one of those traveling carnivals once, and we did the pirate ship or whatever, and my phone fell out of my pocket, just smashed on the asphalt, and it was like, this is the worst. Oh my gosh. I was like so distraught, but then it was like, oh yeah, I just went and got a new phone the next day.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Problem solved.
Problem solved. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it does. It feels like, I mean, especially when you know, like Harry's particular wand.
Oh yeah.
The Holly wand.
The Holly wand.
It's like, no. Get it back, guys.
Gonna need that one back. Yeah.
It fills me with a little bit of anxiety. Just even, it's like, I don't like when it's misplaced.
Oh my gosh. I literally wrote, I can feel his anxiety right there.
Yes.
I was like, he's like, yeah, maybe. It's like he's like trying to believe them, but he's like, that's not what happened.
It's gone.
It's gone. Like I didn't do those things.
Right.
Yeah.
You just lost the stick in the woods at night.
Right. Like, yeah.
It's definitely
gone. Yeah. Like definitely. And I do feel it. And it's like, I know that feeling where you're just like, where is it? Like, this is so annoying.
Right. Right.
Yeah. We had, I remember I was on a ski trip one time, and my buddy Ross, he like lost a ski pole, and he like had a replacement one, but they were like brand new. And I could just, like the rest of the day, you could just like feel this just like, where is it? Where could I have lost it?
Yes.
And he eventually like spotted it from the ski lift and like walked down to it and found it. And it was like, yeah, I could tell that was bothering you all day.
Well, instant mood lift.
Instant mood lift. Yeah.
Yep.
So I can just feel Harry's anxiety coming off the page.
Right.
Yeah. Making him feel very vulnerable. Indeed.
But then that's when we get the rustling noise nearby, where Winky the house elf was fighting her way out of a clump of bushes nearby. She was moving at a most most peculiar fashion, apparently with great difficulty. It was as though someone invisible were trying to hold her back.
This is what I was talking about earlier, where this is very, very well done. Like, you are told exactly what is happening.
Yes.
That is what's happening.
That is exactly what I wrote. I was like, literally, yes, exactly what's happening. Those exact words are written on my page.
Yep. But the cleverness here is that Hermione offers you Harry offers an alternate explanation, saying, I bet she didn't ask permission to hide. And this is just such a good scapegoat because because of how Dobby acted when he was with Harry.
Yes.
So it's like you, the reader, have grounds for why house elves would behave in these unusual ways. It's like because they're disobeying orders and they don't want to be doing it, but it's like causing them like some kind of weird, like forbidden anguish. And it's like that makes more sense to you than like an invisible person is attached to her.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like, and so it completely throws you off the scent. You have no reason to dwell on like, why was Winky walking so strange?
Right.
But if you really dug into it, like there's nothing conflicting about it. It all just makes sense. We just have a good reason to believe why it's working the way it's working.
Exactly. And that reason will continue to be reinforced throughout the rest of the chapter. And then Hermione, like, house elves get a very raw deal. Like, correct?
Yes.
Yep. Then she says, why doesn't anyone do something about it? And it's like, so it begins.
Yes, I know. I mean, this whole like section of the page here is kind of interesting because I highlighted like the whole thing and I was just kind of like, Hermione's of course totally correct, although there is a little bit of like is it the moment? Like,
yeah,
because I mean. Let's talk about this. Very important. However, and I think that even like Arthur kind of has a response sort of similar. It's like, Hermione, I agree with you.
Yeah, but now is not the time for house elf rights.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah.
And then you have Ron in contrast, who's just like so used to the way things are. You're just like, house elves are not supposed to have fun. That's what she likes, being bossed around. It's like, Ron, listen to yourself, man.
I know.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that like I remember as a kid being like, man, Hermione's being so annoying.
Oh, like
about
being,
this,
like the SPEW thing.
Yeah,
and I think that like even the way that SPEW is delivered to us, the audience, and even the way that like Harry and Ron are going to respond to it, like I think I want to believe that that it's like it's almost the way that like a lot of good causes are met with opposition.
Right.
Like people are just kind of like, I'm not preoccupied with that.
Right.
And so like that's like, I want to think what's happening is that's part of the point that's attempting to be made. Is that it's like things like this happen out in the real world. Like,
it absolutely is. And it's like, it is a very good cause to be supporting and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But it seems accompanied by an eye roll throughout the whole book.
It absolutely does. Yeah. I mean, you can imagine from Harry is like, someone put my name in the Goblet of Fire and is trying to kill me, so I got other things on my mind.
Well, and that's exactly the trap I've just walked into in this exact page.
I know.
Is the like, there's sort of danger of the foot.
Right.
Right this second.
Right.
And for Harry, that's his whole year.
It's his whole life.
Right. It's his whole life. Yeah. He never gets a break from it. And yet he still becomes secretary, treasurer. What is his role?
He's just like head of the Auror department, right?
No. In SPEW.
Oh, yeah. Secretary or treasurer.
Yes.
One of those roles you can put on your, college resume that, you can write down, but you didn't do anything.
Right. Yes. That one.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah. Good. Anyway, so let's keep moving forward.
Yes.
This is where it says they followed the dark path deeper into the wood, still keeping an eye out for Fred, George, and Ginny. They passed a group of goblins who were cackling over a sack of gold that they had undoubtedly won betting on the match.
Man, this is such an unassuming sentence.
It really, really is.
You're just like, oh yeah, there's all sorts of magical creatures all around right now. You're seeing leprechauns. You're about to run into a villa.
Right.
There's a riot happening. You're at the Quidditch World Cup. There was just French students. There was a random group of goblins. And it's like, this is such an important group of goblins.
It is a very important group of goblins, because I think that the exact sack of gold that they're cackling over is no doubt from
Ludo Bagman.
Yes.
Yeah, who's going to appear on the scene in just a second.
In just a second, yeah.
You know?
So the Leprechaun Gold, to which I think we have maybe even stepped into an error in last week's episode, because we were like, why was it that the goblins weren't able to figure out that it was Leprechaun Gold?
Yeah.
And I suppose it's worth mentioning that not necessarily all goblins would be like experts in goblin-made treasure.
I suppose that's true. Like Griphook is specifically a like Gringotts goblin.
Precisely.
Who is like well versed in handling treasure.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I do think that there's an outside chance that that obviously their whole culture is going to extend to different professions aside
Right.
from purely treasure. So,
Right. Perhaps we have generalized.
well, yes, just a little bit there. So
Yeah.
Anyway, correction made.
There you go. You're right there. But yeah, it's a very clever sentence, because like these are the Ludo Bagman goblins, but like you don't assume that they were betting with Ludo Bagman. Even it's like Ludo is the only character you've met so far that has been collecting bets. But it's like, you just assume, of course, like, well, it's a sporting event. There was tons of betting.
It must have been happening everywhere.
Must have been happening everywhere.
Yes.
Like, if Ludo Bagman's doing it, everyone's doing it. It's like, no, it's literally the same guy.
The same one.
You only know about one gambling situation, and it is him.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the kind of thing that, like, if they're releasing Goblet of Fire episodically, and we are doing Super Carlin Brothers, back in whatever 2004 when this book was released, I'd love to think that there's a world where you, us, we, anybody in the wizarding world fandom could have sniffed it out.
Maybe, but at this point, we don't know that Leprechaun Gold isn't real gold.
True.
So I don't know if it would have come up yet.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Man, wouldn't it be so cool if you spent all this money to go to like a game and then you just got richer by going to the game?
That'd be crazy.
Yeah. I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
this worked out so well.
So good.
Now we have all this money.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then we run into the villas.
Yes,
where
we
get a whole bunch of really hilarious claims that people are making as they go by. I pull down about 100 sacks of galleon a year. One of them shouted, "I'm a dragon killer." And then the other friend is like, "No, you're not. You're a dishwasher at a leaky cauldron. But I'm a vampire hunter. I've killed about 90 so far."
What an unhinged sentence for so many reasons. One, there's no dishwasher at the leaky cauldron. They have magic. Ridiculous. I feel like that is as much of a lie as the vampire hunter part.
Yeah.
And then I'm also like, are we to assume that does that mean that like the ministry is like hunting vampires? Are all vampires bad? Because like we meet Sanguini later and he seems like,
He's invited to a school party.
he's invited to a school party. Does he look like he wants to bite some of the students? Yes.
Absolutely.
But does he? No.
our
No one's
knowledge.
hunting him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this guy claiming to kill 90. Whew, boy.
Right. And I mean, but honestly, Stan, I think, kind of takes the cake here with about to become the youngest ever minister of magic I am. It's like, that's a big claim.
Big claim.
People would probably just already know who you were, Stan.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, who do you think you are? Percy Weasley?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or Hermione Granger.
Or Hermione Granger. Yeah, probably the actual youngest minister of magic ever.
Probably.
If you take the cursed child that seriously.
Right.
Yeah. Spoilers.
But then this is kind of one of those where we were talking a little bit about how during the Quidditch World Cup, Harry is affected by the Velas. We kind of compared the effect of the Velas and the way that it's described to that of the Imperious Curse.
Yes.
And now Harry is about to turn to tell Ron something, but Ron's face had gone oddly slack, and the next moment he was yelling, "Did I tell you I've invented a broomstick that'll reach Jupiter?"
Impressive.
Which I think is just a fun piece of trivia, because Jupiter, why? That is so far flung. But it seems like maybe Harry is already.
The thing is, an object in motion will remain in motion. So as long as you're pointed at Jupiter, you're going to get there eventually.
I guess that's a good point.
When
you describe it that way.
Come on, Ross. It's not Ross. Ron. It's physics.
It's physics. Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, what are magical broomsticks if not space probes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They could be sending all sorts of. They could be out there.
Yeah.
Doing all sorts of space research in the Department of Mysteries.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there is a solar system in there.
I know.
Yeah. Have you seen Uranus? Good one.
Hilarious.
But Harry is not being affected by the Velas anymore.
Yeah, he's already developed like a
tolerance to
a certain tolerance to it. Yeah. Only got him that first time.
Right.
Not Ron.
Not Ron though. He's still being impacted.
Dude, he's very susceptible. He can't even handle floor.
I know, and she's only like 1/4 Vela.
Yeah, quarter Vela. Yeah. So yeah, not gonna work on him so good. Let's see. Then sure enough, here we go. Ludo Bagman comes up barging into the scene. The words were hardly out of his mouth when Ludo Bagman emerged from behind a tree right ahead of them. So it's like, see how close he was to the goblins? And like the clue is right here because he's like, who's that? What are you doing here alone? And they're like, they have to tell him about the riot. Like he's out there and all flustered about something and it's not the situation.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, and he was gambling and there were goblins with with their winnings right there, all in the same area. And it's like, but you don't put it together.
You don't put it together. But you could have.
You could have. It is right there.
The information you need.
Well, except that you still don't know about the leprechaun gold. You do need to know about that.
You need to know that the leprechaun, but once you learn that the leprechaun gold disappears, I mean, and again, this is where it's like, are you still thinking about this particular scene all that time later?
Right, of course not.
And chances are you're not. But either which way, he still seems like he's lost all of his boisterousness. He's pale, like, and it's not because of the danger. And you know that the goblins were betting, so it's like you may not need to know. Like, he's stressed because he knows that the clock is ticking.
Right. Like, he just handed the goblins the fake gold, and he's like, all right, time to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So he's sort of like scampering from his scene there. So I still think you could start to be sniffing him out if you're being really, really eagle-eyed about it.
Right.
But, I mean, that's hindsight's 2020. So, I mean, it's always hard to say.
Of course, I know. It is. And then Ron, like, to say, you know, they say he's not exactly on top of things, is he? Says Hermione, and then like Ron covers for him, and he's like, he was a great beater though. The Wimborne Wasps won league 3 times when he was with them, and it's like as if that just sort of excuses everything.
I literally wrote that. Because that excuses the weird behavior right now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that would literally be like taking any person ever who's committed any crime and be like, yeah, but back in the day they used to be really good at college football. It'd be like, yeah, then.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's literally like the whole like O.J. Simpson trial, isn't it?
That's true. That's true. Yes, yeah, exactly. But just once again, I'm like, why you guys are throwing to such weird things.
I know.
Amidst this scene, you know, we've got the British, not British. What is the book that Hermione referenced is about Beauxbaton?
Oh,
if I can speak.
Yeah, let's see. What was it called? An appraisal of magical educations in Europe.
Yeah, so you've got Hermione referencing the appraisal of magical education in Europe. You've got Ron being like, yeah, but they won the league 3 times in a row while he was with them. And it's just like, you guys are just dropping facts in sort of a strange way. And at this point in time, Ron takes out his action figure to play with.
I know. He's just like, well, may as well play in the woods. In the middle of the night.
He took his small figure of crumb out of his pocket, set it down on the ground, and watched it walk around.
I know.
Just like,
what is happening? I guess they feel like they're just like, I guess we're just sort of waiting now because we're clearly not in danger anymore.
Good thing I brought a toy to play with.
Good thing I brought my toy. You think he grabbed that on his way out? Like, ooh, hold on.
I think he absolutely did because here in just a few minutes when he's getting ready to leave, he's going to do it when they head back.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yes, definitely. He's like, I bought this, okay?
No time to change out of my jammies, but I got my crumb figure.
Exactly. Oh, man. And then Hermione does bring up like those poor muggles, though. And I'm like, personally, like I know they're going to get their memories modified and stuff, so they won't even remember this having ever happened. But like, I hope the Ministry of Magic like sets them up.
I agree.
You know,
with
like
you.
they need some kind of like compensation here.
Yes. Yeah, give them a windfall that they have. I mean, it's exactly what Newt does with Jacob in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yeah,
where like he needs the collateral to start his bakery, and he has his memory, wiped, air quotes, because it's not actually wiped. But then he's walking out of like the canning factory, and he's left the suitcase of
like alchemy eggshells.
Yeah. So he's just got like a case full of silver.
Yes,
and it's like, all right,
yeah, all right,
go Newt,
go Newt. Exactly. So I hope the Ministry sets up the Roberts family. Even with some kind of windfall that maybe they don't even understand why they got it, but
precisely,
Hopefully they're not just like, whoa, sorry about that, guys. Whoop, now you don't even remember. See ya.
Yeah.
We'll never know.
Never know. Well, then as we move, that's the new sequel that we need. No cursed child. We need the Roberts kingdom.
I would love like a Harry Potter story that takes place in the future where you just sort of like have mention of some like very successful Muggle shop or some, whatever.
Yes.
The Roberts Manor up on the hill.
Right,
You
right.
know?
Yes, exactly. It's like, oh, okay. I see.
Yeah,
I see.
right,
It's out in the moor.
Yeah, it's out of in the middle of nowhere for some reason.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But nobody knew how their fortune came about.
Right.
I love this. Okay. So yeah, then as we jump forward though, Hermione is like, how do you think they expect to get away with it? Do you think they've been drinking or are they just, and then she gets cut off and then I just filled in bad people?
They're just bad people. I know. Even though, I mean, how do they expect to get away with it? Great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because I mean, for all intents and purposes, if you get into the minds of these people, they are actually just having what they believe to be fun.
Right.
And it's like, what? The game ended and you guys like get together and be like, you guys want to bust out the masks?
You want to do it? You want to do it? I want to do it.
You want to be like super fun?
It'd be a laugh. Like, I brought them. Do you guys want it? Should we just I mean, I don't, probably not though, right? I'll just put them on. Put them on.
Goyle's in. He's
already got it. Oh my gosh.
I can't believe you brought it too.
Terrible, terrible people. My goodness. Gosh. But so I don't know. It does seem like it'd be so easy to get caught though, because there is so many ministry people here. Like, all you gotta do is like stun one of them, and then you just take their mask off, and it's like, well, that pretty much going to Azkaban.
Yeah, pretty much. Now we got you. Let's see here. So then there's a noise that Harry hears. It sounded as though somebody was staggering toward their clearing. They waited, listening to the sounds of the uneven steps behind the dark trees, but the footsteps came to a sudden halt.
So this is just Winky and Barty Crouch Jr. again.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. So Harry's kind of calling into the distance. Harry gets to his feet and peered around the tree. It was too dark to see very far, but he could sense somebody standing just beyond the range of his vision.
Good old Harry Potter instincts at work as usual.
That's exactly what I had written down. And he just sort of calls into the night, "Who's there?" And then the silence is broken with "Mors Mordra."
Very good.
Thanks.
I guess maybe at this point he's broken free then, right?
I suppose he is in the process of breaking free from her.
Okay.
From Winky.
Right. Because she's still got to be there.
They're both present.
They're both present.
We know that much.
Yeah.
So to me, in my mind, it's almost like he is attempting to sort of like pull himself free, shoots the dark mark in the air, and then everything else sort of just unfolds so rapidly that nobody has time to get anywhere.
But he shoots it into the air, but he doesn't apparate away.
No.
Yeah, right.
Because he's going to hit with a stunning spell, but he's underneath the invisibility cloak.
Yeah, so it's more like maybe she's just like clinging onto his leg. It's like, I can't apparate away because I got to get rid of you.
Right, yes.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but he casts the dark mark into the sky. Mors Mordra. And then the colossal skull comprised of what looks like emerald stars with a serpent protruding from its mouth like a tongue, which to me sounds way cooler than how they portray it in the movie. I never like the way it looks in the movie.
I know.
It always looks like you can barely see it.
It does seem like a little bit too faint, which is kind of surprising, because at that stage in the Harry Potter movies, they hadn't beefed up the saturation to like 90,000 yet.
Yeah.
And you could usually see most things.
Right.
But not this thing.
I know, yeah. And I imagine it being like very bright green.
I mean, they use the word like glittering, I think, more than once to describe it. So, yeah.
You know how Voldemort likes to bedazzle things.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, he had a diary. He probably had a bejeweler.
I want when in the reboot, the dark mark has got to look cooler.
Yeah.
It's got to be big and obvious,
and glittering.
Like, make it with drones if you have to. Do something awesome up there, right?
Yeah. I like it. But this is another one of those moments where like the setup from earlier at the Quidditch World Cup sort of does like a good job of being like, well, it could just be a leprechaun formation. Like we've seen large installations in the sky.
We've seen it.
Yeah, but no, not in this particular occasion. And the casting of the spell seems to have alerted all of the ministry officials at once, who suddenly all just basically like land all around them in one quick form, right?
Yeah. Okay. Before that, like when they're looking up though, like this is another Hermione. I think this is another Hermione steals Ron's line.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the dark mark, Harry. Hermione moaned, pulling us hard. You know whose side? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but Ron should be the one explaining this.
Yes. No. 100%. This definitely. There's no way in the world Ron doesn't know about the Dark Mark.
Except that he doesn't.
Yeah. And he'll continue to ask about it. So Harry turns, and Ron was hurriedly scooping up his miniature crumb.
Oh, yeah, right.
See?
Aha.
It happened.
Oh, don't forget this.
Don't forget my toy.
I know. Oh, boy, gonna want this.
I highlighted that one and said he needs to sort out his priorities.
I know, for sure.
Yep.
And then you're right. The ministry shows up. I always imagine that they like arrive with like a perfect circle around them.
I agree.
I know.
Yeah.
And then they are just the worst shots in the world. Can you this is a terrible battle formation because they're going to hit each other. It seems like.
Yes.
Right?
If
I
any
can't
of them
believe
misses,
they don't.
Yeah.
Well, if any of them misses, then they all miss.
No, I know. I mean, that's what I mean. Yes. But like even going into the plan, it's like, okay, what happens if one of us misses? Well, you'll hit the person standing on the other side. It's like, oh, darn.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
And it's like, how you might be like, how could you miss? And it's like they do exactly what they're trying to do, and they surround 3 people at once on every side and simultaneously cast their spells, and they miss.
But then they do hit people in the woods off in the distance.
Yes. Yeah, that's almost more unbelievable.
It really is. But yeah, because the moment that they arrived, the 20 wizards all at once yell stupefy. Harry yells duck before then, so they're all safe, obviously. But can you imagine what this would have done if they had all hit any of them? Because
this would have killed them.
Most likely, because McGonagall gets hit by
4.
No less than 4.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that the specific
The answer to the trivia question was 4.
Yeah. I got it wrong.
Me too. I said 5.
Oh, okay. I think I said 5 too.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so McGonagall hits by at least 4, and it sends her to the hospital for a long time.
Yeah.
And now these are all shooting in every direction. So it could have been quite lethal had they made contact.
It also describes the stupefy spell as fiery red light. I'm like, oh, boy, that is not how they portray it either. It always looks more like a red beam of light.
Maybe it should be like a lot cooler.
Maybe I know. I want stupefy to be like red and fiery.
Red and fiery.
Yeah.
Use the text.
Use the text. Make it look cool, man. Whoosh.
Fortunately, though, Arthur just immediately recognizes that this is Ron. He's like, "Stop! That's my son."
Yeah. My boy.
No, Jay, that one hasn't happened yet. However, that man is present.
Funny. It's not funny.
It's not funny. Yeah, it does involve Cedric being died. Being died. My words are really starting to slip here today, guys. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Out of the way, Arthur, said a cold, curt voice. It was Mr. Crouch. What did you do? He snapped, his sharp eyes darting between them. Which of you conjured the Dark Monk?
His face taut with rage as well, and it's like you're not going to understand it in the moment. He's just going to suddenly seem like, I hate the dark arts.
Yes,
and that's why he's so upset. Why he's truly so upset is because he knows exactly who cast it and is so afraid of the truth.
Yes,
and very badly wants it to not be true.
Very badly.
Yeah.
So Ron is like, we didn't do that. Why did you want to attack us for? And then Mr. Crouch was like, do not lie, sir. To which I was like, yes, the boy who's playing with the action figure.
Yeah, right.
I imagine Ron on the ground clutching his his Crumb action figure. Oh man.
Yep.
Crouch's eyes are popping. He looks slightly mad.
Yeah, so he is. From his point of view, he's like, the worst has happened. My son is broken free.
Yeah.
Which is not even exactly what's happened. It's almost what's happened.
So all the while, do you think he is just attempting to pin it on literally anyone else?
I don't know if he's trying to pin it on anyone else. I think, or is he just hoping it's truthfully someone else?
I suppose it could be either. Maybe he's grasping for straws a little bit.
Yeah,
that could totally be it. But yeah, then we have their kids, Barty. They never been able to. And
doesn't actually make a difference because Malfoy will get the Dark Mark and know how to cast the spell before he's an adult.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So technically you could do it as a child.
Yes, you can.
Is the point you're making.
Yeah.
There will end up being a kind of an odd order of questions that seem to come out here, but Mr. Weasley will ask, where did the mark come from, you three? Over there, said Hermione shakingly. There's someone behind those trees. They shouted words, an incantation. And
this is so annoying.
Oh, stood over there, did they? Said Mr. Crouch, turning his popping eyes on Hermione. Disbelief etched all over his face. Said an incantation, did they? You seem very well informed about how that mark is summoned, Missy. It's like,
How that mark is summoned.
it's magic.
She described casting a spell.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? What are you? How do you think it's summoned?
I know this guy's supposedly so smart, but then the next line is, but none of the Ministry wizards, apart from Mr. Crouch, seem to think it remotely likely that Harry, Ron, and Hermione had conjured the skull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rightly so.
Rightly so. Yeah.
Yeah. But then Amos speaks up and he says, our stutters went right through those trees. There's a good chance we got them, which unbelievably they did.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't hit their targets. Or the broadside of a barn, but a house elf and a invisibility cloaked villain.
Yeah. Ricocheting off the trees. There you
Right.
go.
Yeah.
First shot.
Right.
Yeah, and then this is, I guess kind of brave. He says, Mr. Diggory squared his shoulder, raised his wand, and marched across the clearing and disappeared into the darkness. I mean, what they are assuming is that it is a Death Eater, and he's just going in to face them alone in the woods.
I know. Yeah. You can definitely almost even like imagine this idea of, I like the way it says like, yeah, the squaring the shoulder, raising the wands. It's almost like in his head, he's telling yourself like, be strong, deep breath. You can do this.
Right?
Like,
Dun, da, da.
right. What would Cedric do?
Yeah, what would Cedric do? And then, yes, we've got them. There's someone here, unconscious. It's blimey. And this is crazy that he finds Winky,
Yes.
the house elf, because I guess it's unbelievable the invisibility cloak doesn't land on her. Like it lands just so in this situation.
Right.
That they hit Winky and Barty Crouch Jr., but only he is covered and they find Winky instead, who in the meantime picked up Harry's wand, which Barty Crouch was holding.
It's a pretty bad setup.
Yeah, it's a bad setup.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, the other Ministry wizards were all staring at Mr. Crouch. For a few seconds, Crouch remained transfixed, his eyes blazing, his white face as he stared down at Winky. Then he appeared to come to life again. This cannot be, he said darkly. No. And to which the jerkily, in my head, I kept thinking, is he being imperious in this particular situation? But he's not.
No, I don't think so. He's just like a lot of things he is saying without the subtext available to anyone else.
Right.
It's like, this cannot be. No. He's saying, I feel like he's talking more to himself. He's like, no.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. I think that's better delivery, because probably that's a piece of even when you're reading it, from Jim Dale's perspective, he's still reading it more in context with the scene than probably how this character in real life would be saying it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Then this is, then I was just standing up for Mr. Diggory, and then he's like, Mr. Crouch goes there and he says, no point, Mr. Crouch. There's no one else there. And it's like, oh, it's a little arrogant. Okay. There's no chance I didn't see everything there was to see in the dark woods. Okay.
Not to worry.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
I definitely got it all. This is also one where in 2020, it feels like they could do some hominum revelio right here and just be like, anyone here?
Right. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But I don't think that spell existed yet in the canon by the time this happened.
Oh, darn. Okay.
If only.
That's too bad. Maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. Mr. Crouch didn't seem prepared to take his word for it. They could hear him moving around in the rustling of leaves as he pushed the bushes aside, searching.
But he's not actually searching. This is just their interpretation. He finds him.
Yes.
He knows he's over there, I guess, because Winky's there, and he finds his son and just keeps him covered.
Right.
And re-puts him under the Imperious curse.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this is again where you kind of see a little bit of the built-in prejudices, even to characters who probably are at their core decent people, but you've got Mr. Diggory being bit embarrassing, Barty Crouch's house elf, I mean to say. And then, Arthur immediately was like, come off it, Amos. You don't seriously think it was the elf. The dark mark is a wizard sign. It requires a wand.
And it was like, yeah, and she had a wand. And it's this kind of actually harkens back to the Buckbeak trials, because as we know, Mr. Diggory is the head of the department for he says it. Here's the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, which means that Amos is the one who decided Buckbeak should be executed. Don't forget that.
Oh, gosh.
I know.
That's not great.
It's not great. But he also just when you take that into consideration and how he's handling this situation, it's he holds this position, but his resting disposition is that other magical creatures are probably up to no good.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like it's almost like he's not the right person for this job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's not giving enough benefit of the doubt.
Right. He's not giving enough benefit of the doubt. I suppose if we want to give him the benefit of the doubt, he probably mostly deals with creatures that are causing problems.
I suppose that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just then there was another pop and Ludo Bagman apparated right next to Mr. Weasley. I think that like when they first arrived, it said, "We're too late," said the witch in the woolen dressing gown, shaking her head. "They'll have disapparated." And I had actually made a note for this for setup for Ludo Bagman, because now it says that Ludo Bagman apparated right next to Mr. Weasley. So again, like Ludo was a huge red herring for this whole book. So if even if you were reading carefully, you were like, he must have disapparated. Then all of a sudden Ludo apparates into the scene. So it's like, yes, he left from over there and then returned over here. Like, it couldn't have been me, but it's also like, or it definitely could have been you.
Oh, I know. I mean, when you consider that, like, you know, it's like Harry can sense someone moving around in the bushes or whatever. And it's like, well, they just ran into Winky and they just run into Ludo Bagman. And it's like, and guess what? It was one of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it was Winky.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
And you're right. It's like, oh, they said they could have disapparated. And it's like, you can imagine like, if you think it's Ludo Bagman, you can like imagine a situation where it's like exactly what they say happened, where he's like, oh, cast the dark mark, apparated away, and then realize like, wait, all the other ministry people are there. It'll look weird if I'm not there. Oh, I'm back. Hey, what happened?
Hi, what's going on, guys?
Yeah.
The dark mark, he panted, almost trampling Winky as he turned inquiringly to his colleagues. Who did it? Did you get them, Body? What's going on?
Right. He seems like he's blustering so much, and it's like it's so easy to think like that maybe he did it. The fact is, he's genuinely blustering. He's just dumb.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man. Mr. Crouch had returned empty-handed. His face was still ghostly white, and his hands and his toothbrush mustache were both twitching. This, at this point, I think, is because he has definitely found his son and was covering him with leaves or whatever.
That's exactly what he was doing. Yeah. And he says, "Where have you been, Barty? Well, I want you at the match." Indeed. Do we know why he didn't show up to the match? I guess maybe because he wasn't even intending to go. He just like had the tickets for Winky and his son.
Yeah, maybe so.
Right?
Maybe he hates Quidditch.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
But no, probably a more plot related thing.
Yeah.
Gulping gargoyles, Bagman had just noticed Winky lying at his feet. What happened to her?
Yeah. No, Winky conjure the dark mark. She wouldn't know how. She'd need a wand. I love how like the ridiculousness of it, even Ludo Bagman can figure out right away.
I know. I mean, that's what I wrote down. I was like, honestly, he kind of has the right take on the scene. Like, like I feel like he's like, no, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. That wouldn't happen.
Right. He immediately points out the problem too, and Mr. like Diggory or Amos is just like, he is so determined that he's solved it. Like he's like, I got it. No, it reminds me so much of like when you hear those stories of like cops in interrogation rooms like forcing false confessions out of people.
It definitely feels like that.
It's very much like that, where he's just like, nope, I found it. This is my person and I'm sticking to it no matter what. I will get the confession out of her.
Right. I think it's Occam's razor. Is that the thing for like the most obvious answer probably is the answer?
Oh,
and
yes.
I suspect that there's a piece of that going on. Like from his perspective, he's like, guys, we're at the scene of the crime. We have a house elf holding a wand.
We know that wand did it.
Right. And we know that it came from over yonder.
Right.
Like, it's like, he's basically like, guys, what are you missing here? Like, all the pieces of the puzzle are present. Like, you know, I mean, and that's where it takes like that next level of critical thinking. But then finally somebody's like, why don't we just ask Winky what happened? And I highlighted this in particular just because I think it's changed as time went on. The audiobook pronounces the spell that he uses as elevate. But the book that we have, the copy of the book we have, says renervate. And I was like, I guess it's possible I'm just mishearing Jim Dale, but it sounds very different.
Oh, is it renervate or even?
It's RENNERVATE. So.
Boy, I always imagined the spell to be enervate, not renervate.
Oh, okay. And maybe that's even what he's saying. It's just enervate.
Oh, okay.
But
like not getting the R.
It sounds like elevate, though. I'm going to be honest with you. So anyway, we can figure that out. Yeah.
And then Mr. Diggory, incredibly condescending, just calling Winky elf. It's like calling someone boy. It's like, boy, you know?
Yes, you're exactly right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you know who I am? I'm a member for the Department of the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. I guess a member, not the head of. Isn't he the head of?
I think he is the head of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, clearly has very low opinion of magical creatures, though. Let's see. And it says, you were found with a wand in your hand, barked Mr. Diggory, brandishing in front of her. And as the wand caught the green moonlight, Harry recognized it, which is pretty interesting. And then you're like, wow, wait, what?
What is going on? Hey, that's mine, he said. Everyone in the clearing looked at him. Excuse me, said Mr. Diggory incredulously. That's my wand, said Harry. I dropped it. You dropped it, repeated Mr. Diggory in disbelief. Is this a confession? You threw it aside after you conjured the mark? And again, Arthur is like, dude, use your brain.
He's like, dude, that's Harry Potter, bro. Why don't you step aside?
Yes. I like the Papa Bear ferocity from Arthur in this situation. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it's Harry.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It is interesting though. It says, is Harry Potter likely to conjure the dark mark? And it's like, hilariously, like within the Death Eater community, like some did think he was like a dark wizard around
the second coming.
The second coming. So it's like there wasn't zero context for that, you know.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And then you get this line that says, of course not, mumbled Mr. Diggory. Sorry, carried away. And this is something, and it's possible we know this is canon information, but I can't remember it if we do, because my response was like, to be fair, he is probably scared in this situation. And do we know what happened to Cedric's mom?
Oh, I don't know if we do.
Because like that's the type of thing. Like, what if Amos was one of those people who came home to the dark mark over his house?
Oh, you're right.
That would certainly throw you off.
It absolutely would. He's acting like very rashly here. Definitely getting a little carried away.
Definitely getting a little carried away. And we've already sort of had this taste of him being like a little bit like, what's the right way to describe it here? Like, not great with words, maybe like you know, a little brash. I think that's maybe what I'm going for.
Yeah.
You know, where he talks about like, you know, one man fell off his broom and one man stayed on. Like
one man fell out of his lake, one man didn't.
That's a good reference. But yeah, anyway, so that was like my little in the moment headcanon was like, is it possible that Cedric's mom was killed by Death Eaters?
Gosh.
Because Cedric is also so good that I can only imagine that a member of his family also fought the good fight.
Yeah, I can imagine that being the case as well. Also, it's possible he might just not know what's become of Cedric on this night.
That is
like,
also
we don't know
true.
where Cedric is right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably off like mending wounds.
Probably.
Or, you know, applying bandages or putting out fires or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And then Harry, this is like a random sentence. He says, I didn't drop it there anyway, said Harry, jerking his thumb. I missed it right after we got into the woods, which sounds like some kind of British phrasing. But he's also just wrong about this.
Yeah.
He's actually been missing it since the middle of the Quidditch match.
Right.
So.
Yes. Yep. You're exactly right. Because I think we will eventually learn from Barty Crouch Jr. that he just sees it sticking out of the boy's pocket.
Yeah.
Does he specifically know it's Harry's?
He does know because Winky identifies Harry by name and Harry confirms it.
You're right. Okay.
Yeah. Boy, can you imagine? It's like, this is one of the things. It's like hard to remember when Barty Crouch Jr. reunites with Voldemort, but like it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So like he's not working under any like plan yet.
Yeah, he's just trying to break free.
He's just trying to break free. So it's like, can you imagine like otherwise if he already was, he'd be like, Harry Potter's wand, heck yeah.
This is such good news.
I am going to be so rewarded. I'm gonna have so many silver hands. I'm going to be made of silver.
That's a dangerous game for you there, friend. Yep. But yeah, so then Amos kind of goes immediately back into sort of this aggressive line of questioning. You found this wand, elf, and you picked it up and thought you'd have some fun with it. Did you?
I was not doing magic with it, sir, squealed Winky. Yeah.
Right.
I was just picking it up. I was not knowing how. Yeah, look, very speaking up in front of all the ministry was, this is Hermione. Speaking up here, saying she looked very nervous speaking up in front of all the ministry wizards. Winky's got a squeaky little voice, and the voice we heard doing the incantation was much deeper, which is just like, this is big like Gryffindor energy from Hermione here, like standing up for something she believes in the midst of like being in no position of authority.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then Harry and both Ron chime in as well that it definitely didn't sound like an elf and that it sounded like a human voice, said Ron. And we'll see soon, growled Mr. Diggory, looking unimpressed. There's a simple way of discovering the last spell a wand performed, elf. Did you know that?
So rude.
So rude, and you're right. I mean, yeah, he just continues using just elf the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an important moment because we do learn about Priori Incantado.
Yes, we do.
Which is basically the spell that will allow you to see the next thing, or the last spell that, of course, came out of it.
Yep.
And in doing so, we will learn that this exact thing is, in fact, the last spell that this wand did.
Yes, we are.
I do like the description that it's a mere shadow of the green skull high above them. It looked like the ghost of a spell.
I know. It's a very good setup because this is, of course, how Harry will get out of the graveyard later is because of Priori Incantatum. So it's like this is the setup for way, way, way later in the book.
Yes. Yep. Indeed. And then Deletrius. I just highlighted this because I think it's a good piece of trivia. It's the spell that is used to make the Priori Incantatum go away.
Yep.
So that's just
Deletrius.
Just a good one to pocket away in the back of your brain.
Deletrius, Reducto, any of those, right?
Right.
Just, you know,
You've got them
Evanesco.
all. You've got them all locked and loaded.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll definitely do different things.
So, said Mr. Diggory with a kind of savage triumph, looking down upon Winky, who is still shaking convulsively.
Yes. So she just keeps saying she didn't do it. I'm not knowing how. And Mr. Diggory is like, no, you've been caught red-handed, caught with the guilty wand in your hand. It's like, it does make sense when he says it like that. But Mr. Weasley speaks up again. He says, where would you have learned it? Which is very much the correct question.
Right. Yes.
But like, and in terms of like, no, but like, where would she have learned it? Like, if you can answer that, like, then you know the answer.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is where, Barty Crouch Sr. and his own knowledge of what's going on starts to really twist the situation because now he's the one kind of like pulling strings because he knows more than anyone else. Perhaps Amos is suggesting that I routinely teach my servants to conjure the dark mark.
Right.
And then Amos is like, oh no. Like Mr. Crouch, no, not at all.
Not at all. So I wouldn't dare dream of it. And then this is very good, almost like politicking by Mr. Crouch here. It says, you come very close to accusing the two people in the clearing who are least likely to conjure the mark, Harry Potter and myself. Like he like just casually groups himself in with the boy who lived.
Yeah.
And it was like,
that's a tall claim.
I was like, wow, definitely not Harry. We don't definitely know about you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think he's doing a logical fallacy here because he's like, I suppose you're familiar with the boy's story, Amos. And it's like, yeah, we've already covered.
Yeah, we know about Harry.
We know about Harry. What about you?
What about you? Do we know your story? Yes.
Yeah.
Says, if you accuse my elf, you accuse me, Diggory. And it's like, it's not off the public record that his son was a Death Eater. Like, that would, like, be known.
It would be known information.
Yeah.
We need Dumbledore here to
We do need
chime in and be
Dumbledore.
like, well, Mr. Crouch.
Yeah, that's what they're missing for sure.
As the only person here who's not afraid of you,
Right.
let me remind you.
Yes.
If you accuse my elf, you accuse me, Diggory, shouted Mr. Crouch. Yeah. So where else would she have learned to conjure it? I guess that kind of happens twice, that particular moment there. Let's see.
Yeah, it's basically saying, yeah. 'Cause, his reasoning is that if the only way Winky could have known it is if someone in my house taught her, and how else could she have learned to conjure it? And it's like it's such weird reasoning because like that's exactly what happened is that someone in your house did conjure it.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yep. You get another great moment from Arthur, who kindly turns towards the elf and says, where exactly did you find Harry's wand? And then obviously Winky explains, as finding it there, sir, she whispered, there in the trees. Whoever conjured the mark could have disapparated right after they'd done it, leaving Harry's wand behind. A clever thing to do, not using their own wand, which would have betrayed them. And Winky here had the misfortune to come across the wand moments later and pick it up. The misfortune is probably the piece of that interpretation that's a little bit too generous.
Yeah.
Because it's not really, I mean, it is misfortune, the whole situation, from Winky's perspective, but it is going to be a person who Winky would go to great lengths to defend.
Yes.
Also.
And then, boy, oh boy, the next sentence also, this is like writing riddles.
Yes,
like this is loopholes at its best. Because because like Mr. Diggory, I mean, he's sharp at the very least. He says, but then she'd have only been a few feet away from the real culprit, which is accurate.
Yes. He's doing a good job like staying on task and asking the next most important question.
Yes, he is. Unfortunately, he phrases it in just the wrong way. He says, Elf, did you see anyone? And the word see is vitally important here. If he said, Elf, do you know who conjured the mark? We would this book over.
Book over.
But he says, Elf, did you see anyone? And it's like, this is so tricky because Winky absolutely knows who did it and who the culprit is and exactly who they're looking for. But did she see Barty Crouch Jr.? No, she did not.
Yep.
Because he's under an invisibility cloak.
That's right. Yep. And so
yeah.
I think that it's very interesting programming as well, because like, I mean, this is going to go back to like when Sirius shouts out at Creature, and Creature is sort of like, it's almost as if there's like a piece of like code that's happening inside of their brains, like allows them to like see all available actions associated. And so in this particular case, like she's able to Winky is able to think on her feet rather quickly and say, I is seeing no one, sir, no one.
I know, because she like looks at Mr. Crouch and kind of like gets a cue from him,
right?
Like double checking. And she says, "I is seeing no one, sir, no one," which is true. She did not see him,
right?
So she has not lied and she has answered truthfully. But it's like it is deceptive to. It is very sneaky right here. It says, "So what, Amos? I'm fully aware." Oh, this is the other big thing that happens here, because Mr. Crouch, it's like, boy, it's really unlucky for everyone that he is here, because he says, I'm fully aware that in the ordinary course of events, you'd want to take Winky to the department for questioning. I ask you, however, to allow me to deal with her. And then Mr. Diggory looked as though he didn't think much of this suggestion at all. And it's like, boy, does Barty Crouch dodge a bullet here, because you're right, that is what should happen.
Yes.
Like, because you know what? You're right. Like, given a few more rounds of questions, he'd phrase it correctly eventually.
True.
And he'd get the answer.
Yes.
And like Barty knows that. Like he knows exactly what that, like why she's saying I didn't see anyone.
Right.
And he knows that questioning is going to get the truth out of her.
Right.
At some point. Which is just a bummer, because like that is what should happen. She should go there. They should question her. They'll get the information they need. But he's such a high-ranking person. He's saying, "I'll deal with it." Which, as a result, and this is what makes it very, 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 very tragic, is that had they done this, probably like Amos gives in here. Like he makes this request of Amos, and it is this request that ultimately gets Amos's son killed. You know.
No,
right?
That's so true.
Like if Amos had just been able to question Winky, then they would have gotten to the bottom of this a lot sooner. Right.
And it even says that he looked as though he didn't think much of this suggestion at all. It's like he's actively like even like rejecting this as a concept, but it's like, but I am outranked here. Like you're my ranking officer, and therefore like I can't really contest what you're saying.
Yes.
Man. That's terrible.
So, and I don't want to put all of that on Mr. Crouch. Obviously, what gets Cedric killed is Voldemort. You know?
Well, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But the irony is kind of interesting that we're literally dealing with like two major dads whose sons are going to be so directly impacted by the actions of this very conversation.
This scene.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's the important thing to put emphasis on there.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So this is where we finally see Mr. Crouch basically threaten clothes.
Oh, I mean, yeah, very much. He says, and it's like this is where it gets a little confusing too. He says, Winky has behaved tonight in a manner I would not have believed possible. He said slowly. I told her to remain in the tent, and it's like the way he's choosing the words. He's like, he is apparently talking to everyone, but he's actually just talking to Winky.
Right.
He's saying, I told her to stay in the tent while I sent out the trouble, and I find that she disobeyed me. This means clothes, which to me, this does not add up as good reasoning at all. Like, if I'm Barty Crouch, like, I don't want to set this elf free. Like, you can't have her spreading information out there.
Right.
Like, why does he set her free? I honestly don't get it.
I don't know. I mean, I guess like the thing that the conversation I feel like they're having beneath the surface, obviously here is like, I told you to keep him in the tent and you didn't do that.
Yeah.
And now because of that, like, whatever. But I mean, I think also the other big piece of it here might just be like Barty Crouch understanding Winky well enough, because like this means close. Like Dobby would have like killed for that sentence to be said.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and so that was the note that I wrote here, was just that like the tone that is so drastically different from the last time we've seen an elf presented with clothes is unbelievable. I mean, Winky is shrieking and prostrating herself at Mr. Crouch's feet. Like, no, master, not clothes, not clothes. Like, and it's like, this is devastating for Winky. So I don't know if it's like Barty Crouch is having faith that like, we even know that going into the future that Winky's going to have a very hard time saying anything ill of her house.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just that blind trust.
I mean, I guess you're right. It definitely is. And then like the interesting thing too is like that to everyone else, like the way this is all going down, he says like, because later he says, I have no use for a house elf who disobeys me. And it's like, if you're everyone else, and especially Hermione in this situation, you're like, you told her to stay in the tent and she didn't, and now you're firing her.
Right.
Like the firing seems based on she left the tent.
Yes.
Right.
You're right. You're right. Yes.
Yes. When of course, in hindsight, we will know that the firing is based on letting a Death Eater loose. Right. Yes. But this kind of goes back to the next, because the next thing that we have here is Hermione's going to chime in again and say, but she was frightened, like your elf's scared of heights and those wizards in masks were levitating people. That's what I was kind of mentioning at the beginning of the chapter, where it's like the specific brand of torture that I think were included for the purposes of writing this chapter fit so nicely with that idea of Winky being scared of heights. Because in this particular moment, it's such an obvious explanation as to like what would have caused her to want to get away from that. Right.
Like it's like she was afraid of heights. She was afraid if she was caught, she'd be put in the air. So of course she had to run.
Right.
Yes,
that is very good as well. The other curious thing about the people being floated up in the air is that when you fast forward to like Snape's worst memory,
yes,
is like that's what's happening to him at the hands of James.
Oh, you're right.
As well. And
you think
it's
they're
like,
using Levicorpus?
I don't think they're using Levicorpus. I think they're using, because they're like forcing them into weird shapes.
That's true.
And stuff. So I think they're doing something more like Imperious-y, or like some combination of spells.
Gives me the shivers.
And it's like, it's like of course both situations are so bad, but it's like, I don't know if there's really much of a, but it's like clearly this is done as a hate crime.
Yeah.
Whereas like James is also like, it's not like he's not being nice by any means, but I don't think he's trying to hurt Snape either.
Yeah. I mean,
he's just trying to embarrass him.
Right. I mean, he's definitely being like a capital B bully.
Yeah.
But I think that there's the, well, I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to defend any of James's actions, but I think that there's a decided difference between what's happening to the Roberts and what's happening with Snape in a situation amongst two schoolyard rivals who are constantly exchanging blows.
Right.
We'll leave it at that.
I know. Yeah. But it's like, I think Harry does remember, like he does compare the two scenes eventually.
Oh, does he?
I think he does.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Also, this is the fun little, this is just a little Easter egg to be looking out for when you're ever reading Harry Potter. It says, Mr. Diggory handed Harry his wand and Harry pocketed it.
Yes. I did the exact, I literally was like, there it is.
There it is.
So yeah, this line in particular famously is the one that Jim Dale struggled to be able to pronounce in, I think, Philosopher's Stone. And so it's then included in every book on purpose afterwards. So this is Goblet of Fire's pocketed it.
There it is. Pocketed it.
Which is kind of hard to say.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's see. And then, Hermione is just cannot stand the injustice, says he knows she didn't do it and he's still going to sack her. And it's like, he didn't care how frightened she'd been or how upset she was. It was like she wasn't even human. And this is such an odd interaction. Rod's like, well, she's not.
Yeah, I know. I just wrote eye roll next to that. I was like, Ron, come on, buddy,
like, dude,
come on.
Like clearly has like human like intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is where Arthur chimes in, and I do appreciate, as always. I mean, he's just always such a good person. But Hermione, I agree with you, but now is not the time to discuss elf rights. I want to get back to the tent as fast as we can. What happened to the others? So it's like, I think what Arthur's trying to say here is like, you're absolutely right, but like safety right now.
I know.
It's
like, this is the thing though. It says, but now is not the time to discuss not the time to discuss elf rights. But like that is the sentiment. That is the sentiment for like everyone. It's like it seems it's never the time to talk about that though, is it?
Maybe that's the point. Yeah. That's a good observation.
Like, when is it the time?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. We lost them in the dark, Dad. Why was everyone so uptight about the skull thing? So again, Ron just not knowing what it is, but Arthur does offer to say, he says, I'll explain everything back at the tent, which is rare for an adult to be like, I'm just going to tell you when we get there. Yeah. So then when they do get there, let's see here. They run into
a group of people out of the woods. They're saying, what's going on? Who conjured it? Arthur, it's not him, meaning Voldemort. And he says, of course, it's not Voldemort. We don't know who it was. It looks like they disapparated. And then he leaves. This is the line that's going to be quoted by Rita Skeeter in the next article that causes so much kerfuffle in the next chapter.
You're right. You're right. Yep. He just wants to get his family to safety in this moment.
Right. And Rita Skeeter's going to be like, oh, what? One person who was in a hurry to get his kids to his tent and didn't tell us something? The ministry knows nothing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Charlie's head's poking out of the boys' tent. Dad, what's going on? He called. Fred and George and Ginny got back, but the others, I've got them here, said Mr. Weasley. Bill was sitting at a small table holding a bedsheet to his arm, which was bleeding profusely. Cool. Charlie had a large rip in his shirt. Awesome. And Percy was sporting a bloody nose.
Probably tripped.
Oh, that was so good. That was so good. Fred, George, and Ginny looked unhurt, though shaken. So that's good. That nobody probably tripped.
How are they all getting hurt?
I don't know. I guess they were in the fray.
I know. Was there like a scuffle?
Maybe
I want to hear more about this.
A dueling? I know. Yeah. This is the vignettes we need.
Yeah.
Is like what happened to Bill, Charlie, and Percy.
I know. Like, were they like actually like in combat with the Death Eaters? Because that would have been pretty cool.
I know. I want to see that battle.
Like they got bleeding somehow.
Right. Yeah. Let's see here.
Yeah, and then Percy is, of course, just indignant about the whole thing. Mr. Crouch's elf? Well, just swells up that this is just terrible. I can't stand for it. Mr. Crouch, anything he did was clearly the right decision.
Yes, yeah. For running away when he had expressly told her not to, embarrassing him in front of the whole ministry?
Yes.
It's just like, come on, Percy.
Mm-hmm.
Do better, pal. Do better.
You're Crouch's man through and through.
That's less good than being Dumbledore's man through and through. I'll tell you that much.
Way less good.
Oh, man. Yeah, you have one of these moments, though. And it's interesting because it actually happens again with Ginny, I think, in book 6.
Yeah.
But this is the moment where Hermione is like, she didn't do anything. Hermione snapped at Percy, who looked very taken aback. Hermione, who had always gotten on fairly well with Percy, better indeed than any of the others.
Like then even his family.
Yes, I know. Yeah. I think when it's with Ginny, it's over Quidditch. It's like, oh, come off it, Hermione.
Yeah. Don't pretend you understand Quidditch.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, oh, man.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
That got icy quick.
It did.
Yeah.
I guess this is like, especially in like book 1, Hermione is much more of like a Percy-esque character, like very focused on the rules and everything.
Yeah.
And here she is in this book, just lighting her wand in the woods willy-nilly.
I know.
Breaking the law.
Ugh, impressive.
I know.
She's
well
sorted
done.
out those priorities.
She sure has.
Yes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Ron is over like, someone just please tell me what the skull was.
Oh, man. I told you it's whose symbol, Ron, said Hermione before anyone else can answer.
Oh, I read about it
in the rise and fall of the dark arts.
Oh my goodness. Like Hermione, not just like Arthur's lines too.
Yep.
And it hasn't been seen for 13 years, and Mr. Weasley. Let's see. Ron, who and his followers sent the Dark Mark into the air whenever they killed. So that's the big explanation for what it means. So, which honestly, then when you know that, it's like, wow, you guys didn't look hard enough for a body, right? No one was like, who's been murdered?
That's true.
You know?
I mean, it honestly seems like that should be the first thing anybody said.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they arrived on scene. That's a really good point.
Right?
Because I think even when the Dark Mark is set over the lightning struck tower, that's like, I think it's like what Dumbledore asked right away.
Yeah. Who's been killed?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like apparently what it means, but no one's looking for a dead body. Even Amos is like, nope, there's no one there. Don't bother looking.
No further examination needed.
Probably not a dead body, despite the giant glowing skull.
Right.
I
right.
looked. I found everything.
Yeah.
He super didn't either.
Right. What is kind of interesting though is that it scares the Death Eaters away the moment they saw it, which again is kind of like one of those big like red flags that I think the first time I think even the first several times I read this book, I didn't even like fully process this piece of information.
Yeah.
Of course I was like a fourth grader, but still, like I don't think it dawned on me completely that like the Death Eaters who were attacking at the Quidditch World Cup weren't just in cahoots with whoever cast the Dark
Well, it's a
Mark.
very confusing situation.
It is, yes, yeah. We will learn that the Robertses are okay, and they're going to be grandly rewarded for their unfortunate role that they had to play inside of the situation. It doesn't actually include that information.
I know, I was like, wait, are they?
No, but we have now included it from our own Super Carlin Brothers canon
That's right, yeah.
perspective. So yeah, we're all on board for them.
Mm-hmm.
We finally get introduced to the term Death Eaters.
Yes. Which is, it scared the Death Eaters when Harry has to ask about that. It's, who supporters called themselves, said Bill. And it's like, what's interesting is like, this is the first time we've heard the word Death Eater, but by the end of the book, when they all arrive in the graveyard, we're going to know like a big cast of them.
Yes, we are.
And like, we'll learn about all of them like slowly one at a time through various means throughout the book.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's like really good little like Death Eater world building over that's going to be happening like in the background as we move forward.
That's true because I don't think there are many Death Eaters whose names we don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I think we pretty much can name all of them.
Yeah, I think for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of interesting thing we were mentioning earlier with the kind of mob mentalities that maybe more people agree with the Death Eaters but aren't full-blown Death Eaters themselves.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We get a little bit of a reference to Ron bringing up like Draco Malfoy being in the woods, and he as good as told us that his dad was one of those nutters in masks,
Correct.
which is true.
Yep, he was. And then Harry has a just a great question, like, what were they doing levitating muggles? I mean, what was the point? And then Mr. Weasley comes back. The point, Harry, that's their idea of fun. Half the muggle killings back when who was in power were done for fun, which I highlighted and said like, or to fill up a cave.
Yeah, because there's a certain cave full of Inferi that had to be populated from somewhere.
Yep, with like thousands of Inferi.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, Voldemort's around there collecting some bodies after the fact.
Right. I suppose they had a few drinks tonight and couldn't resist reminding us all that lots of them are still at large. A nice little reunion for them, he finished disgustedly.
Yeah, with an odd amount of support, too.
Yeah.
Not too many people being like, haha, that's hilarious.
Right. Which, I mean, I guess even that almost like is required to make sense when you consider like it seems like the whole wizarding world kind of turns on Harry in Order of the Phoenix. Like,
yeah.
It's like you kind of have to assume that there are more like sympathizers than you want to think, because otherwise it's like most of the Ministry people we meet up until book 5 seem like largely good people.
Right.
It's like, what about all them? What are they doing?
Right.
They can't possibly be like, yeah, Harry sucks.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah,
even during his trial, it seems like a lot of them, like, is it Madam Bones?
Yeah.
Who's kind of like, you can cast a Patronus? That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Like, I'm starting to think you're not such a bad kid.
I'm starting to think.
Yeah.
What do you know? Let's see. And then we have the whole conversation here, which sets up like a very interesting argument to like be worrying about for the rest of the book for the reader. He says, where Bill says, use your brains, Ron. If they really were Death Eaters, they worked very hard to keep out of Azkaban when who lost power and told all sorts of lies about him forcing them to kill and torture people. I bet they'd be even more frightened than the rest of us to see him come back. So Bill gets it, and this is actually exactly Peter's point of view from the last book.
It's Peter's point of view, and it's this is even exactly what Barty Crouch Jr. is going to say later on in the book as well. It's like he's going to say exactly that there's nothing he hates more than a Death Eater who walked free.
Right.
And basically what he's saying is like, like it's super irritating to me that these people got to go out and just like live their lives instead of going and trying to get Voldemort back to power.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Hermione has a line here. It says, were they doing, so whoever conjured it, were they doing it to show support for the Death Eaters or to scare them away? Which is like, it sets up a good mystery, but also it's like, if you're reading this for the first time, it almost seems like, what kind of question is that? Clearly they were showing support for the Death Eaters.
Exactly.
And it's like, you're like, it definitely wasn't to scare them away, but like that actually is what
yes,
it was.
that's what Barty Crouch is doing. He's
Yeah.
like, see, I'm a real one.
Yeah.
You guys down there playing your games and such. No. I'm casting the Dark Mark.
Right. And then we're also going to get some setup here for Karkaroff and or Snape on the last sentence here to be whoever put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire, although we don't know that mystery is at play yet. Mr. Weasley says, I'd be very surprised if the person who did it hadn't been a Death Eater once, even if they're not now, which is going to just leave just Snape and Karkaroff on the table.
Yes.
As far as we know moving forward.
Right.
Yep. And from that, we're moving towards the end of the chapter here. They go back to the tents, and Harry is wide awake and worried. And then you get the reminder. Sirius is going to kind of bring this up later when they meet him in the cave, but like Harry's sort of like stringing together all of the signs where it's like, just 3 days ago, I felt my scar burning, and now Lord Voldemort's like mark appeared in the sky. Death Eaters are appearing. Like at the Quidditch World Cup, like there's like Bertha, like someone went missing, or Bertha Jorkins is missing. It's like there's one too many bad coincidences happening in a row here.
We're starting to string together a constellation, if you will. Like it's painting a picture, but kind of like one dot at a time.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. But that does, in fact, and we get the reminder that we have that letter to Sirius to kind of like look forward to on the horizon. But otherwise, that does bring us to the end of a rather lengthy chapter 9.
I know, a lot of stuff happening.
Yes, indeed. But Jay, before we close out for the day, do we have a review?
We sure do, Ben. It's from EWDXA.
EWDXA, shout out. How's it going?
Yeah, I know. I think this is like an Apple-generated screen name.
Okay.
They say, loving the pod. Hey, brother, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I love all your content. I have a question. If a Dementor were to have sucked out someone's soul, then that person put on the locket, could the piece of soul take over the person's body?
So, interesting.
I feel like we've talked about this maybe a little bit before, but like let's assume, like, so at the end of this book, like Barty Crouch Jr. is going to get the Dementor's kiss.
So he's just a husk of a person.
Just a husk of a body.
So technically alive.
Technically alive, no soul. So could the soul, like from a Horcrux, like the locket or the diary or something, like flit in him and just like animate his body?
I think so.
I'm inclined to think yes.
Because, I mean, how would it be terribly different from what's happening with the diary itself?
I mean, that's exactly it.
Like,
I mean, yeah.
I mean, in that particular instance, like Ginny is like putting so much of like her trust and, you know, heart and soul into the diary, which is sort of like what builds the linked bridge, if you will. But like in the moments that Ginny can't remember, like it's like she is not at the steering wheel of Ginny Weasley anymore.
Yeah, I guess it's a little different from the diary. Well, because like what he's stealing from her. So we always think of it as like you've got your soul, and then you've got like the life force.
Yes,
like the thing keeping you alive. And so like the diary has a soul because that's what makes it a Horcrux. What it doesn't have is a life force. So what it's stealing from Ginny is that.
Yes.
So Ginny will end up dead, and that is what will keep that Tom Riddle alive.
Correct. Yeah. And so like what he's really but I'm talking more about like when she's like writing with the blood on the walls and that type of thing. Like in those moments, Ginny has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, she's like effectively a Horcrux.
She's effectively a Horcrux. Yeah. Like I think that like her soul has almost been like pushed aside or, you know, knocked unconscious, so to speak, or something of the sort. Like she's like waking up and she's like, there's feathers all over me. I don't know what's going on. Like, you know, there's blood on my hands. This is scary.
Yeah.
People are being attacked, Tom. I don't know what I'm doing, Tom. Tom, help me, Tom.
Right.
I think that's how that line of phrasing from Tom Riddle goes, because he's being such a jerk and whatever. But yeah, so I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be the case, because it even feels like when like Ron in particular is wearing it, it seems like the Horcrux is not fully winning. Like it's not like the Horcrux is able to like take over Ron, but it's really putting up a fight.
Yeah, it's like putting really negative thoughts in his brain.
Right.
So I do think it could like get inside him, like animate the body. Although bear in mind that wouldn't make that person Voldemort. That person is still a Horcrux.
Correct.
Right? I mean, they're probably still pretty terrible and very evil and quite dangerous.
That's probably where the Diary Horcrux in particular is so unique in nature, because it has so much more of like so much more of like Tom Riddle inside of it. Like it's so much
Yeah.
more specifically weaponized, because even then, if you compare the ring to the locket, like putting the locket on causes a lot of like negative side effects by way of the Horcrux, but like it doesn't do the same thing as like the ring, which curses you.
Which just kills you, basically.
It just kills you. So then, I mean, it brings to life a very interesting question. Like, if you were to place like the diadem, which would already be infused with like this power to like make you more intelligent, if it wouldn't have a greater capacity. Like, I think the diadem could potentially be even more dangerous than the locket because of the already known existing power of the diadem.
Right.
So it might even be more effective at this exact objective.
It might. The other thing about the locket too, like the reason it might not kill you to put it on is because like Voldemort in his own arrogance assumes that the only way to claim the locket is by drinking the potion.
Okay.
Right, which is true.
Yeah.
But he also sets it up so that only one person can make it to the lake.
Right.
In his mind, in terms of magical power, which like doesn't register Harry, which is so dumb.
Yeah. Not so smart.
Arrogance again on
Right.
Voldemort's part. That's always his worst enemy, more than Harry.
Right.
So like in his mind, he's going to be able to like the locket doesn't need to kill you because the whole point is that he'll show up and question the person who drank the potion, who will be so weakened from the potion that he'll just kill them.
Exactly.
Right.
And probably learn enough information in the process to then also take down anybody who could be helping that person.
Exactly. So like
Yeah.
the locket doesn't need to kill you because he wants to find out who got through his defenses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Because that's a glaring hole at that point in time.
Right.
Which I guess he's willing enough to acknowledge that maybe he could have had a hole in his defenses, which it does feel like a rare piece of foresight on his behalf.
Yeah.
But either which way. Yeah, great question though. Very, very interesting. It's always fascinating when we deal with that like sort of life force, soul, kind of counterbalance situation where it's like which one is doing what and which one is where, because the idea of living without a soul is also so strange, because it's like while you're not technically dead, you certainly can't live for very long because all of your motivations would be hard stopped.
Yeah, just be like gone.
Right. Like you would almost need like a feeding tube or something similar, because otherwise you're not going to have any, like even like hunger shouldn't drive you to eating, because you are not like living for any reason.
Well, I think you could still like eat and stuff.
I think you could. The question is, would you?
I think you probably would.
You would. Okay.
Oh, because so I mean, this is a different franchise and stuff, but I kind of imagine it. Well, I don't know. I feel like it's probably worse than Harry Potter. But like, if you watch like the movie Soul,
Yeah.
like when they save the guy with the lost soul,
Yep.
like the stockbroker guy, and he
Yeah.
like jumps back in. Like that guy is still like going to work and going through the motions and doing things.
Right.
And then once his soul comes back, he's like gives his life purpose again.
True.
Well, not purpose. I guess that's a whole thing in that movie. Yeah. But like,
We don't hand out purposes here.
we don't
Never
have
gave you that
that
idea.
gave that idea. So I do too.
We're so off the path. Anyway, as a reminder, guys, if you would like to get early access to any future episodes of Through the Griffin Door, or even better yet, listen ad-free, you can do so by heading on over to patreon.com/Through the Griffin Door. And if you sign up for the annual membership, then we will actually send you one of our marked up pages from our copies here that we have for the official show, which is really cool. And we sign every single page for you. So it will also be signed in addition to having any other adornments that particular page had. And I just got to tell you that, like, by this point in Goblet of Fire and Prisoner of Azkaban, I mean, every single page of my book is just bleeding with ink.
I know.
So,
The later books, I feel like I mark up way more significantly than I did like Philosopher's Stone.
I think it's because, and we've talked about this, like our episodes are getting like increasingly longer, even when the chapters aren't necessarily longer.
I
Of course,
know.
we're creeping up on 2 hours right now.
I know.
But I think we're just getting better at the dissection process as the show continues. So there just ends up being more and more stuff. It's like, oh yeah, that's worth bringing up. So
Yeah.
hopefully you guys don't mind the additional length, but I think otherwise that will be doing it for us here today.
I think it will. Make sure you tune in next week for Chapter 10, Mayhem at the Ministry, here on Through the Griffin Door.
Today's episode was edited by Ethan Edghill. Vaishon Brandon does our art. Catherine Stein is our production manager, and the show is hosted by me and Jonathan Carlin.